want to go live with them, and then I'll be ready to go. Here we go.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Right. It's tough to have your tech together and you
Oh
do
yeah,
it
I mean
yourself.
I'm horrible at this, and I just the Zoom is driving me absolutely mad. Let's just see here with Sprecher, and then I'll click record, and we'll be in business. This will take another minute here. Sprecher is being a little slow. So if you're already listening on the other streams, this is Charles Moskowitz. We're live, and I am in the process of, there we go, getting up and running. They want me to drop an image. I don't need to have an image, but I'll send one if it makes it go. Let's see. Okay, and I guess we're ready. Go live. Done. And let me go live on Zoom, and then we'll be off and running here. Zoom. Okay, we are live on Zoom. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moskowitz. David is here. David and I do a program every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where we discuss matters of faith and politics, Judaism in particular, both Israel and American Judaism, and often we delve into various religious questions. David, thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure as always, Charles.
So, David, I think that we need to start out, obviously, with the installation of the new administration and what that portends for Israel, and what do you think that portends, in a sense, for Judaism in America?
Yeah, I can't predict the future, but I noticed a few things. The first thing I noticed was that Doug Emmendorf held two Bibles for Kamala Harris, and I guess she had used one of the Bibles for her previous ceremony, but I was somewhat surprised that I pay attention to that historically, like the oaths, because oaths are a serious thing, and that I guess it makes sense, but that she would take her oath on the Bible, and that her Jewish husband would be the one holding it. Wasn't a surprise, but to actually see that was probably of note and telling of her allegiance. Obviously, she put her hand on the Christian Bible as her allegiance when she swore to God. So you could assume.
What is her religious background? Do we know?
I looked it up. I guess she grew up going to a Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
And she had like an adoptive stepmother, because I guess her father had, I don't know, abandoned her, or and her mother was a single mother, professor, and she had another woman or family member, that relative, someone that helped raise the children, and that's the Bible that they used. And I'm not sure, because maybe her mother didn't have a Bible. I'm not sure if Kamala Harris's mother, she probably wasn't Christian, although that's unclear. I haven't found any records. But being a religious show, take note of that. I also watched the Interfaith, the prayer service today, and that seemed pretty telling. That there was the spoil system. No more Chabad and pro-Zionist right-wing rabbis. It was female rabbis, and it was funny. Like I recognized most of the people. Like, I've been doing interfaith my whole life. I like interfaith, and they had like Rabbi Sharon Baruch from I think California, who's, I think she's friends with like Sarah Silverman or something like that. I'm not sure her congregation or the outlay there. They had a rabbi from congregation Beit Simchas Torah in New York City, and I'd actually been there. I remember I prayed there once a Friday night, and I even went to the new building. But that's the LGBT synagogue in Chelsea that actually Mayor de Blasio, the synagogue he goes to, and I remember they even had a.
Where's de Blasio going? It's de Blasio. Is not. Is he Jewish?
Well, no. I mean, he's definitely not Jewish, but I'm saying he goes regularly to a synagogue, and I mean, he goes to Bubba, like my landlord, J.J. Fleischer. Fleischer was buddies with. Friends with de Blasio going back many years before he was in politics. I mean, de Blasio hits all the synagogues. He hits the Hasidic synagogues. Like you could see.
So he's just doing it as a politician.
by saying but he likes Jews and he goes to synagogue. When he goes to synagogue, he goes to Congregation Simchas Beit Torah in Chelsea. You can even see on their video page, YouTube, when they moved from the old congregation to the new building, they had like gay flags in a Torah procession, and you could see a picture of Mayor de Blasio dancing with a Sefer Torah, and I think the Sefer Torah even had like the gay flag colors. So, if you're not familiar with that,
I mean, in a way, we could say that Biden is going very liberal religions. I mean, and I think that Biden himself, along with Nancy Pelosi and John Roberts from the Supreme Court, it kind of forms a very liberal Catholic troika and group. And I think that they are probably pretty well aligned with the ideas and the philosophy of Pope Francis in Rome. And that we're seeing that sort of supplant more conservative Catholics, and also we're seeing the liberal Jewish groups, as you say, like the Rainbow Coalition Jews, supplant Chabad and supplant Orthodox Judaism.
well, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the U.S. spoil system.
Right. No, I get it. I think we should identify it. That's all. That's what we're looking at now, for sure. Anyway, what else is going on?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I told you I didn't think it made a big deal whether it was Biden or Trump, and I think now you're going to see. Like, I mean, I forget the exact verse, but maybe it's in King Solomon, or that the heart of the leader is controlled by Hashem, and the American system is basically built upon distrust and checks and balances. And
Yes.
it's more my view of human nature is the fact, Benjamin Franklin, corruption, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So to me, it's a fact. Kamala Harris and Biden, if they weren't corrupt already, which almost they certainly were, you don't rise to that level of power without being corrupted. And the forces are largely going to be corrupting. And, like I said, it's going to be like, now it's my turn. I'm in power. And the masses are largely misguided, turning to the government for helps to their problems, because the government is actually more likely to hurt people than help people, God forbid. And so I'm pretty pessimistic. Maybe the system of checks and balances. I heard that President Trump tallied up a $6 trillion deficit just last year. I mean, incredible beyond belief. And so
$6 trillion? I don't think so. I hadn't heard that.
Well, I mean, we'll see the numbers when they release, but it's probably horrendous.
Yeah.
And so I would predict we're going to see austerity. That right now you're seeing all the promises, and because it's the Democrats generally, there was a lot more promises, and they're not going to be able to meet probably like 1 in 5 of the promises, and so the honeymoon will be over quickly, and the Democrats will start demanding what they put Biden in office for, and I'm predicting he's not going to be able to deliver it, and so we'll see what happens. Like, it's too hard to predict the future. Like, God forbid, it could be Armageddon, blood in the streets, or.
Well, we're already seeing a little of that. Apparently, in Portland, Oregon, there's like literally an uprising. It's like an insurrection over there, and for whatever reason, I mean, this is probably, might even ratchet up more. And I don't know if the response is going to be to get a country that's more militarized. I think that may happen based upon what we even just saw in Washington right now, with the military coming out in force to the point where the city is shut. It looks like it did in the Civil War. I mean, there's so much military there, and there were very few people. And, it's troubling. I mean, I think that there's a sense of unease in the country. I think that most people, they know in their heart of hearts that that it was a stolen election, and I think that's not helping. I just these are times that I don't mean to sound hyperbolic.
Anyone feels good about Biden?
No, and I view this as
you're
soft.
Stolen if you're implying like like even just to say a stolen level that you're going to get arrested, you're going to get disbarred if you're claiming that people
Yeah.
cheated in the actual
And that's a concern. And that's why I
vote.
say we're at a time of soft
But I mean,
Nazism.
but I'm saying that obviously Biden screwed Bernie Sanders, like Buttigieg and all the others who dropped out and backed him, and Trump and all these factors in the media, the elites, Facebook, social media, like anybody would have to be blind to say like they basically teamed up to force Trump out of office, and for the people to be like, oh, I'm happy now Trump's not in office.
No, I mean there's a sense of unease because
I doubt it. Like I don't see what good is going to happen to anybody.
No, I agree with
that.
Yeah,
Biden's in power, and I think God forbid, probably going to be bad for us Jews. That
probably. It's going to be. We're going to see more war.
Years ago, it's really the economic decline.
Economic decline, war. Already. On day one, he's already signing an executive order that is helping the communist Chinese by canceling the XL pipeline, which is costing who knows how many thousands of jobs in the United States and Canada. And the Canadians are just going to ship the oil directly to China. That's what China wants. They want us to not be energy independent. They want us to cut back. And they're involved in environmental practices that are not good. I mean, they're burning dirty oil and dirty coal. So it's not. This isn't an issue of environmentalism. It's just a giveaway to China. So isn't the climate accords? It's going to put straitjacket on the United States and Western Europe, while China, which again burns dirty coal, they didn't sign that. They're not part of that agreement. Neither is Russia. Neither is, I think, Brazil. I mean, some of the worst offending countries. So this is a return to the old internationalist, disloyal, establishment. This is a regression. We are moving away from a return of responsibilities to the people, and I call it soft Nazism. Now, I don't mean Nazism as in anti-Semitic. In fact, a lot of people involved in this thing are Jewish in background. I mean, National Socialism, a collusion between a government that has been put in place by certain corporations, and that those corporations have monopoly power. And I think in the case of Biden and the powers that be right now, that those corporations are a combination of Wall Street players and the big tech. People like the people that are giving me this little show, Google and Apple and Twitter and those people.
You want to see how state rights play out. That the chances are there will be a move to sort of like nationalize the U.S. They'll probably use COVID-19 as the cover to do it. And I mean, God forbid, I think the death tolls are right back up to almost the highest ever. They might keep on going up.
They're already talking about a virus in Boston. This is they say the English virus is coming in and it's more contagious than ever. So yeah, I mean,
it's rollout's turning to be a disaster, and you're seeing like how incompetent these people are.
Well, the problem with the vaccine. Let me just talk a little on that.
Roll out the vaccine.
Yesterday, I had on Michael Shaw, who studies science, and he's been studying the vaccine, and he's written thousands of articles on science going way back. And he says the problem with the vaccine is that you're supposed to get it in small doses. Really, he said, ideally, you should have 4 doses over time. But it's not logistically convenient to do it that way. There's a lot of reasons why they've decided not to do it that way. So instead, they're giving you 2 doses. And those are very big doses. And that's causing problems. Some people are dying. I mean, it's causing, it's more dangerous to do it that way.
God forbid, but I'm just saying, even if there weren't problems with the vaccine, just the fact that, and that people aren't really that interested in taking it, the logistics, just here in Michigan, there's articles of shipments being too cold, too warm, ruined,
right,
supply chains, mess ups, and that will probably continue. Like, obviously, we should talk about what this means for the Jews and Jewish group strategy. And I would see the 2 main schools are going to have a big split off. And if the prognosis is that America is on the decline, there's nothing that could be done to reverse that cycle, the logical thing for Jews to do is to try to abandon ship and make Israel as strong as possible, and to say, okay, like I'm doing pretty good here in America. America's on the decline. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to continually do that well. So if I could get out and take as much of my wealth possible to Israel with me, there's a extremely strong logic to doing that, and I think you're going to see a big push for a new, more powerful Israel, and just to say, American Jews and the American government will have a very small voice. Likely Biden, the Iran deal. I mean, they're going to see that like Biden's not going to be sitting at the head of the table of American nations. No one's waiting to listen to him. No one cares, and so Israel will have to it has a lot of potential to rise as a more powerful nation. Even like the chief rabbi of Israel says that Israel needs to take the place of America on the world stage. And how much Israel could take the place of America on the world stage, is highly in doubt. But on some level of a Jewish way of looking at it and saying like factually America's on the decline, what does that mean for global Judaism? And then for the Jews who aren't looking at it like at a global Judaism, but just looking at our own self-interest as American Jews, um, the factionalization will be much harder, because what it means to be successful in America as a Jew will probably be in conflict with what it means to be successful in Israel in global policy, and saying this new multiracial, multicultural America that Jews are getting very comfortable with, and liberalism and censorship, and that might fail. I mean, might be right that that's just going to fail, but Israel is not moving in that direction. There's absolutely no evidence that a Biden administration will have any effect at all on Israel moving to the left, and it would be people like Jared Kushner and the majority of Jewish wealth, even liberal Jewish wealth, foundations that have hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in some of them, to say that it's time to pack up and move to Israel. And then if you're looking historically at debt cancellation, factual level, what happens to the Jewish people as societies decline, and historically, it's not good for us. And E. Michael Jones, if you look at like a factual assessment about how much debt there is in America, who owes it and who's it owed to, probably 20-30% of American debt is owed to Jews. Organizations, banks, holdings that are ran by Jews. And there could be a serious issue like in Europe that most people never thought about, but obviously me and Charles, that's what we talk about, partners in Torah, we've studied this many times. We've both talked with E. Michael Jones. There will be a necessity for debt cancellation in America, and at the same time there will be need for borrowing. So could Jewish money shift to Israel, and then force the U.S. government or China, whoever the U.S. government, if they're just going to print money or however they do it, who we're going to borrow from, and then money that's saying like we got to get out of America. But the first attempt is probably going to be the globalization of the corporations, because the corporations need a strong U.S. military to keep a global order, and I think that's going to collapse. And
well, that's what we're going back to now. I mean, I think with Trump was withdrawing from that. He was de-escalating America's use as a mercenary force in the world to help corporate interests, and and that sort of thing.
I mean, he was de-escalating.
Yeah, and now we're going back to
de-escalating the regime change, but he was keeping up with the corporate interest, and Trump was even saying that.
Not so.
Like you pay us to defend us.
Well, but he was making Japan, he was making them pay for their own defense. Germany,
you pay us to defend you. We're not.
Well, he was making them pay for their own defense.
We're defending you, and you have to pay.
Well, yes, but also I think he was transferring. The whole idea was a gradual transfer of responsibilities for defense to the respective nations, and a gradual withdrawal by the United States.
What Trump are you talking about? Trump was talking.
I'm talking about Donald J. Trump.
U.S. military, the most powerful military
for the United States,
the crumbling infrastructure
for the United States, not as the world.
Money to do that
for the United States, of course, but not as a gendarme for the world. That's what we're going back into now. That's what we were into under Obama and the Bushes and Clinton, where we were constantly embroiled in wars all over the world. It goes back. We're back to the policy of perpetual war for perpetual peace, The United States is nothing but a gendarme, a footprint for the world. We're like a province, and we just are policing. Trump
Yes,
was
that's what I'm
moving.
saying, that the global infrastructure of the logistics and supply chain for global humanity that the modern industrial age needs basically has no other choice than to use the U.S. government to defend it. So even if the U.S.
But the
people
problem is
don't want
Trump
to
was.
use
I think Trump was withdrawing from that, and I think he was moving more toward a nationalist position and suggesting other nations do that as well. In other words, move away from Wall Street, move away from the internationalist, globalist corporations who are not loyal to any nation, let alone the United States. They're loyal to their own profits. I know I sound like a Marxist when I talk about this, and I'm not against business. I'm not against corporations. I'm simply pointing out that the structure as it's set up now actually promotes international Marxism. It's one where people are basically fooled into thinking that this internationalist entity is virtuous and right, and that Trump was moving us more toward a nationalist position, America first position, making America great again. I believe that he meant that, and he was putting in policies to do that, and that's why he was taken out. And now we're back to the old regressive sort of soft Nazism of the past, where we're moving in a direction of the state preserving the interests of unelected elites. And but I think that my view is a little bit more optimistic than yours is, David. Right now, we're only one day into this administration. I don't think it's going to be the end of the Jews are going to have to pack their bags and take all their money and go to Israel. I say this with respect for the Israeli mission, and it's a Jewish mission, and it's in a way, in the broad sense, it's my mission, which is a return to the Holy Land as a way to create a holy commonwealth and bring about the redemption. I mean, I get that. I recognize that as a part of my faith, and I believe in that. Having said that, I'm also, and first most, a very proud American first. And I don't think that the Jews of this country are ready to pack their bags, liberal or conservative. I think
No, I mean, they're
there's
not. I'm talking about the big money players
even the
and
big
the
money people.
foundations and the people that represent Jewish
No, I
interests.
think they're here. They're going to be here. I mean, American Judaism ain't going anywhere. I mean, I think that, and I don't think that
I
even
don't see
though,
that. I mean, I think there's been an Israeli takeover somewhat of American Jewish organizations for decades now, and now it's even in Metro Detroit, but almost all major cities, probably like 30% of Jewish leadership, is like Israeli, born in Israeli, sends their kids to the IDF, and that's probably only going to increase the Israeli
that could be.
control over American Jewish organizations, and the American Jews will have less and less need for Jewish organizations because either it can be Orthodox and they're not going to be part of a greater Judaism, or they'll be kind of like the death of like Doug Emdorf, who held the Bible for his non-Jewish wife, his second non-Jewish wife, and I mean, God bless him, I'm not blaming for that.
Oh, the first Jew, the first wife was also not Jewish.
State of American Judaism, and Doug Emdorf doesn't need Jewish organizations. Like, it's not really benefiting him or his family. And then saying, yeah, I think you're also going to see on the Israeli end, and I've been saying this for really 20 years now, Israel is going to eventually have to end the right of return for American Jews. It's just a fact.
Why?
Israel knows it. American Jews
Why?
know it.
Why would they? You mean because there's too many?
Well, I'm saying the main impetus to peace in Israel is the right of return for Jews.
Sure.
That is saying any deal that Israel makes for peace with the Arab nations is going to have to likely include the end of the right of return for Jews. And to me, like, I even agree with that.
I don't think that's true.
You're saying like American Jews don't deserve the right of return to Israel. I mean,
I don't see evidence of that.
It doesn't make sense for Israel. It doesn't make sense for American Jews.
It makes a lot of sense for
Israel. Could end that instantly. Be very simple for Israel. Just cancel it. There's no more right of return.
Why would they do that? I mean, it's a basic function and purpose, because both Israel, spiritually and nationally, of the Jewish state.
Changed. Israel is no longer. That's no longer the purpose. Israel is a state of the people that live there. It is not a state for Jews who need to flee persecution.
But there's still a
especially in
huge
America,
Aliyah
where
movement.
you're saying that I don't need a state of Israel in case America tries to genocide me, God forbid. I'm not worried about that. Like, I don't need the right of return because I'm scared that
You
my
do need the
neighbor's
right
gonna
of
turn on
return.
me.
What if there is
And
a
then from
genocide?
Israel's perspective, Israel can't move forward, make a decision, either move to Israel or just X. You can't. It's not yours. Saying like exit. You're never
No,
going to live
I
there.
don't think. I
You
don't.
don't have
I've
that
never
right.
heard that. I
And
mean,
how does Israel move forward and make peace with the Palestinians with this?
they're making
moving,
peace now
millions
with
of Jews that
Arab
might
states.
You might need to make room for them
No,
that might move to Israel.
they can build islands. I mean, they if they need more space. I mean, I think there's Israel. There's no evidence that Israel's in any way going to do that. And I want to be, and let me be clear when I say
a deal with the Palestinians that doesn't include the end of the right of return for Jews.
When I say that we're involved right now in soft Nazism, I don't mean that in anti-Semitic terms. I mean it more. It's a National Socialist orientation, and I also don't think it's going to really work because I still believe that in this country, and I still believe in American institutions. I do believe that Trump won, which means we have a huge majority of Americans who are not going to put up with it. We have Trump winning openly several of the biggest states in this country, including Texas and Florida and Ohio. And I just don't think that America ultimately, these neo-Nazi, establishment types are going to be able to pull it off. They might try, but I believe that our country is still very resilient and strong, and that the American people are conscious enough, we're woke enough in the real sense, to understand who we are and what our destiny is as a people. So I don't mean to sound pessimistic.
The American people recognize that we don't need the government. The purpose of the government is to check power,
right?
Not to have power. And the shift in America is going to be, no, we need a national center of power. And the Biden administration, if they're successful, is basically going to nationalize America. And the only way for the right to stop that is really going to be a revolution. It's probably not going to happen. And if it does happen, God forbid, it's not going to be pretty. But I don't see any.
It could happen. I would never say no. That's why we have Israel.
I haven't said in Jerusalem. I'm saying it was really the last stand of the blue-eyed man. That Trump was really the blue-eyed man's last stand, and you're saying like, no, the blue-eyed man's going to make a last stand somewhere. I don't see where.
I don't know about people's eye color. What I do know is that when last time I was in Israel visiting my Orthodox family members who live in a kibbutz, an Orthodox kibbutz in Israel, and my cousin said to me that he expressed this opinion. He goes, eventually you're going to have to move here because America is going to become so inhospitable and so anti-Semitic that you'll have to avoid another genocide. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I remember that's never going to happen.
The right of return. He is right.
Not the good old U.S. of A.
Like, either Israel should become the place for Israel, and you say like, no, you're never coming there. There's no room. If you had your chance to move there and you didn't, so you no longer have the right.
I'd have to
that they really are going to have to end the right of return. You don't see that at all.
No, I don't see it, and I'll have to look into that. I just have never heard anyone even suggest this. I mean, to me, the right of return is such an integral part of Israel's mission in the world, always has been.
The Palestinians, you deserve the right of return, even though you haven't been there for 2,000 years. But the Palestinians who were there in their own lifetime, they don't get the right of return.
No, they don't. It's a Jewish Zionist idea.
You think under the Biden administration, you're going to be able to
I think in the Israeli administration it will.
Reject it for Palestinians.
No, the Israelis are never going to give that up because that's the core of the Zionist mission.
For it then, and saying, so it's the question: are Israelis going to kill for that? And saying,
no, they don't have to kill for it. They will continue on and upward. I mean, it's part of the Zionist zeitgeist. It's part of the whole mission. It's both a spiritual and national idea.
Because our Jews are goyim. Doug Emdorf and Joe Biden's half and quarter Jewish grandchildren are the future of American Judaism.
Who are Biden's half and quarter Jewish grandchildren? It's
I think all of them. I mean, according to the Jewish press, all of them.
What, his children were married to Jews?
All of them. I mean, he doesn't have a single grandkid that doesn't have some Jewish blood, from at least what the Jewish papers are saying.
Whatever. The point is that Israel's never going to give
up. Doug Emdorf is for like Kamala
That's
Harris,
not typical of all American Jews.
Are half Jews.
Well, first of all, it's a son and a daughter, and I didn't know that his first wife was not Jewish. That's
because either you didn't care or you didn't look into it.
I
but
just
it's-
didn't know.
it's well known.
I care. I mean, it's not the most pressing thing. Anyway, look, I think
I mean,
that
what you don't think that's going to have a long-term impact on the future of
what,
Judaism?
intermarriage?
That the most powerful, Merrick Garland is a half Jew. Okay,
Oh,
but
is it?
Janet Yellen's still 100% Jew. But you're saying in the Biden administration, there's very few full Jews. Like, I mean, almost all the people that Biden appointed are half
What about
Jews
Tony
or quarter
Blinken? I
Jew.
think he's Jewish. He's the secretary. Tony Blinken, Secretary of State nominee.
Are you sure he's 100% Jew?
Yeah,
You didn't
I'm
look
pretty
into
sure
it?
he is. I'm pretty sure he's all Jew.
But I'm saying that is switching, and at this day, you're going to see the American people are more likely to trust partial Jews because that's our new multicultural,
That's probably true.
America.
Oh, we're more likely
what is going
to
to be the right of return? You're going to say
Yeah.
Joe Biden's quarter Jewish grandkids have the right of return, but Palestinians don't. And so he's
Well,
like
they do if they have a
like,
Jewish
I
mother.
deserve the right
Wait a
of
minute.
return. I'm 100%
They do
Jew,
if they have a
but Joe
Jewish.
Biden's quarter Jewish grandkids don't deserve the right
First
of
of
return.
all, they do if they have a Jewish mother, and secondly, I think that isn't the right.
They
of,
don't have a Jewish mother. I mean, some
then I don't
think
think that
I mean,
they.
you're wrong in Israeli law. You don't have to have a Jewish.
Oh, you
mother
don't?
to have
I
the
thought
right
you have to have
return.
a Jewish. I thought you have to be. I mean, don't the rabbis also have a say in that? Wasn't that a controversy?
The rabbis have absolutely zero say.
Hasn't that been a controversy? Wasn't that a controversy?
Who gets buried and who gets married, but the right of return.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this was a controversy during the Soviet, immigration of Jews, where you had a lot of non-Jewish Russians who wanted to go to Israel because it was better than Russia. And
the rabbis had zero say, just like in America.
No, it was a big controversy.
It was a major based off of a halachic status of Judaism. And I mean, it's if you're descended from a Holocaust survivor, you could demonstrate Jewish lineage. You could be a 1/8 Jew.
What do they mean Jewish lineage? 1/8 Jew is right of return? Is that what you say? If you have one Jewish grandparent?
I mean, I'm
one
not
Jewish
Israeli,
great
expert in Israeli law.
We'd have to talk to.
That,
I don't think so.
I know as a fact the right of return. I have the book.
We'll have to talk to. Why don't we get somebody?
When we talked about why religious Jews oppose Israel, that was one of the issues. That when they defined the "who is a Jew" question, they divided up the issue. So the rabbis don't have any power or say over immigration. They only have power.
Well, we'd have to get an expert on marriage regarding the state policy on that.
If it was Begin, and he decided that people who had Jewish fathers and non-Jewish mothers have a right of return, even though they can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery and they can't get married.
And that was not the case.
Current status of
all right,
Israel.
And that was not the case before Begin.
But there was a case from the Supreme. No, I mean Begin's not the right name. It's Ben Gurion. So that goes all the way back to Ben Gurion in the 50s.
All right. Well, look, maybe that could be tinkered with a little bit. I don't know. The Israelis, between the Supreme Court and their government, could tinker with it, but I don't think that they're going to get rid of the right of return. I just don't see that.
I do.
Really?
I'm
okay.
Like
interesting. We should. I mean, I just had never heard it. I'm not saying no, but I highly doubt it.
Where I'm telling you that you don't deserve the right of return. I'm telling you that most Israelis think that way too.
The Israelis think that Americans don't have the right of return?
That your right of return is what's ruining Israel. I'm sorry, Charles.
I think they are encouraging Americans to immigrate.
Israel needs to be a country for Israelis, not a country
you're telling me
arrival of American Jews.
You're telling me
now,
that the Israelis are not encouraging
the of American Jews, as opposed to being a country.
Well, what is the birthright movement all about then, David? I mean, I thought that the Israelis are trying to welcome American Jews. They want them to bring their money,
That's
of course.
That's a legal status. Israelis don't have to.
So the Israelis are not.
Return, regardless of what any.
I get it,
I don't care. Like I could move to Israel. The right of return applies to me, even if all Israelis hate me. It's my legal right.
Yes, but I thought the Israelis welcomed Americans.
Quarter Jewish kids from their father.
All right, that's another story.
Doesn't matter.
I just thought the Israelis.
Legally. They could move to Israel. And there's nothing that you or any other Jew
can
stop their legal right.
Well, maybe that could be, as I said, that I don't want to talk in the merry-go-round here. Maybe that could be tinkered with. But the broader point is that I have always assumed, and maybe wrongfully, that the Israelis welcomed American Jews. And when I say American Jews, I'm talking about good old-fashioned garden variety Jews like me. They welcome Jews back to the motherland, back to the Holy Land with open arms. I mean, my cousins both made Aliyah to Israel in the 1960s, and they're fully Israeli. They've got children, grandchildren, big families in Israel.
I mean,
They
factually, statistically, that American Jews are the least likely of any Jews anywhere in the world, even Iran, to move to Israel. And the number of
That's
former
true.
Americans that made Aliyah, I think, is like less than 50,000. Like if you consider
No.
all the Jews in
And I don't
America,
think I don't think the Israelis have a problem with
less than
them.
like 50,000.
I mean, I know a couple of people in my synagogue here locally who recently made Aliyah to Israel. I mean, I think
Yeah, but the
there's always been.
statistics are clear. Like 3,000 about. And the statistics are actually the opposite. That every single year, 10,000 Israelis or plus become Americans. The maximum number of visas that the U.S. allows to Israel is maxed out every year, plus chain migration.
Sure.
Israel, Americans moving to Israel
is less so.
It is like 2,000 to 3,000 a year.
So then why wouldn't the Israelis therefore want more Americans?
Well, it doesn't matter what they want. It's legally set up. That is saying.
Well, you're saying they don't want them. They're not popular.
It doesn't change that we have a right to go there, and they don't have a right to stop us. So I mean, it doesn't matter what they want or whether.
I understand that, and I support that, and I think they do want it.
Just like immigration, it's Biden. It doesn't matter. Like you don't want refugees and immigrants here now, but they're going to be here anyways. It doesn't matter.
You can have a policy. I mean, Biden has already stopped the construction of the border wall. One of his first executive orders, and there's already, I think, caravans heading north. So
I think I was thinking before I came on that the most pivotal, probably, event in Trump's presidency was the fake bomb threats at Jewish institutions at the beginning of his presidency. That's really what set the presidency, the anti-Semitism.
Apparently, they were called in by an Israeli.
Yeah, so I mean, I knew it was Israeli. All that I looked at it and I was like, that has to be an Israeli.
Yeah, and it was
doing it, but it's saying that. What makes you think Israelis like us? And you even think like I would even say that there's a lot of anti-Semites
I just maybe they
like
don't. I assumed it.
Like the bomb threats were called in by an Israeli. They weren't called in by an anti-Semite.
Well, if they don't like us, they should damn well like us. I mean, I assume
they don't have to. That's the point. Just like Israelis have a God-given right to not like us. I say, like,
they have the right not to, but I don't think it's rational.
That's like Israel has to be a country for Israelis,
no,
and therefore they have the right to not want Jews from all over the world coming there and changing their country around. You're just like I said, like Israel was a socialist country.
Look, I mean,
and now you're saying American pressure is pushing Israel to become more capitalist.
It's up to Israel as a sovereign nation to determine their own immigration policy, just like it's up to us as a sovereign nation. I hope
because you don't talk to Palestinians, you don't realize that the Jewish right of return is probably the single biggest problem in moving forward to peace with Palestine.
I know, I do assume that, and I say that's too bad for them. But what I would say is that Israel has a right.
More, even from the Israeli perspective, it's more likely going to be too bad for you.
No, look, Israel has a right to determine its own immigration policy like any other nation. I hope that they're not going to get rid of the right of return. Maybe they could reform it a little bit so that someone's great-grandparent, that I get. You want to have somebody who is Jewish. But having said that, I hope that they don't get rid of that, because to me, that's a part of not only Israel, but it's also part of Judaism. I mean, what
do you see happening there? I mean,
I don't see anything happening.
Israel's not about to make a shift to the left. In all likelihood, it's going to go further to the right. How is the Biden administration?
But is a right-wing Israeli going to try to restrict the law of return? I mean, that's part of Judaism.
But I'm saying, what's going to happen with think they're going to be able to force Netanyahu out of power and get someone liberal in charge? Or
no.
Think it's likely, even if it's not Netanyahu, the likelihood that it's going to be someone further to the right that replaces him is extremely high. And then how is the Biden administration in American Judaism and you're going to deal with that status in Israel? And then how are you, as an American who, you might not really be able to do anything for Israel anymore, in a period where, as an American Jew supporting Israel, that meant something. But just like 50 years ago, a Russian Jew who supported Israel meant nothing relatively, because there was absolutely nothing that they could have done to help Israel.
Right.
And it could reach that point in America. It doesn't matter how much you love Israel or what you do to try to help it, that the power of the U.S. is going to be reduced, and Israel is going to have to go their own direction, and it's going to be continually more and more contentious with the Biden administration.
I think that's true.
Netanyahu could play a strong hand, and he could just be like, "Screw you, America! I'm going to start teaming up with Russia and China."
Sure, and that could happen.
It could be in their best interest.
It could be. I mean, I've never been
legitimately in the best interest of Israelis.
I've never been comfortable with Israel needing to accept so much foreign aid from the United States. I think it's hurt Israel in a way, but if the United States is going to be delivering that kind of foreign aid to Israel's enemies, then they have, it sort of becomes like, you don't want to go in a battlefield unarmed. But having said that, I think Israel Israel would be a lot more independent without that. They would never have probably withdrawn from the southern part of Lebanon if they hadn't been pressured by the United States, and that was a disaster. I mean, they probably would be much stronger today if they had gone on their own and formed their own alliances in the world based on their own interests and not been as dependent on the United States. So I don't know if that's a bad thing.
I would say, I mean, God forbid, besides for the fact of the power in Jews in America, that it could be in the interest of the Biden-Harris administration to turn against Israel. That in their own
I don't know if it would be in their interest, but I could see them doing it
strategically, internationally, and with the multiracial coalition that's being built in America. That there's a lot of good reasons why Biden could take the side against Israel.
Why you think the multiracial coalition is going to be anti-Israel?
Yeah, because because there's going to have to be Muslims and Arabs and all these various people.
Yeah, they might be, but I don't know if other people are going to be. I mean, I get that they don't like Israel.
I mean,
That's
Israel
clear.
Is going to probably be the largest contradiction in the Democratic coalition. Like if Biden, Harris support.
So you think they're going to sell out Israel
in the biggest single contradiction in the larger coalition, because most of the members of the coalition aren't really pushing for foreign policy. So if it's blacks and Hispanics or the Middle East, as where Israel is basically an illiberal state in that sense, and it's not going to change. It's going to move further to the right, and it's going to crack down on. There's going to be pressure for the Biden administration to crack down.
Yeah, I think that's
on Israel. True. Isn't that obvious?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, they're going to go with the coalition, the intersectionality of left wing,
like right or wrong. Like
no, I mean, I do think it's wrong, but I get it.
Making a calculation.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a danger.
You go with Israel or go with the opponents of Israel. It could be very reasonable that Biden would make a calculation to go for the opponents of Israel.
It could be. I don't doubt that for a minute. I mean, take a look at people like AOC and the radicals, Tlaib. You're over there in Michigan. I mean, these people form intersectional relations with other left-wing groups. And yeah, they have a huge impact, especially if they put Biden out to the farm and Harris becomes president. They would have a huge influence. So yeah, I don't doubt that for a second.
Promoting feminism, like female rabbis, conversion in Israel, that chances are that's really what Biden's core interests are going to push him for. That's really what they want to.
Well, I think that is that Jewish feminist group,
women at the Kotel, and women's equal rights and these various things. But
on the other hand of it, Jewish feminist groups and Jewish gay groups were told to stay away from the the pussy hat rallies. Those organizers, they were told they weren't welcome. So there might be a few cracks in that intersection. If you will.
Best case scenario is like we get like a new Gingrich, and honestly, I think it's going to be President Kamala Harris.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's only
like how long that takes, and she probably will administer. Like she might be like a dictator in some sense, that she'll administer austerity and crack down on all peoples.
Of course, she has the Jewish husband.
Fist on not just blacks or whites or neo-Nazis. It's just going to be a pure iron fist. And it could be coming soon. Like Biden had warned people that he was going to do these mask mandates, and the numbers, the deaths.
He did do a mask mandate. I think it's they signed an executive order, 100 days of mandatory masks.
I mean, and it's funny because like I saw that they had a big wedding in Borough Park where I'd studied in Bubba yesterday, and it was questionable whether it met the standards. Like it was outdoors, and but they're probably okay because it's in America. And the Supreme Court just ruled in favor of religious freedom, but that's not the case in Israel. Israel has basically a military state style, Chinese style COVID-19 lockdown, and it's just been extended till January 31st, and people are getting arrested and fined. And at the height of the Israeli lockdown, you couldn't go more than like a kilometer from your house, and they tracked you. And if a person went more than a kilometer from their house, they
Yeah,
risked arrest. And that was like that not just in Israel, it was like that in Italy and a lot of in Spain
I know it's
and all
worrisome.
over.
It's
So,
very bad.
what's the likelihood? With coronavirus as bad as it is, what's the likelihood that the Biden-Harris administration, in order to defeat coronavirus, decides to impose these draconian lockdowns? Like, I'm saying Israel, but I mean Israel is
No, I
just
think
one
they're
of
already doing it.
like basically all the
I,
other
I agree
countries
with
do.
you. They're already starting it. They've already the 100-day mandate mask. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, and I think that I don't know if that's ever going to end. I mean, it's just I mean, it's that kind of power in the hands of government. Government generally doesn't relinquish power once they have it. They can find some other excuse. Maybe they'll call it global warming. I don't know, whatever.
So
It's
just coronavirus will be the big issue, because
yeah.
coronavirus will be the only issue that would give the potentiality to the Biden administration to seize, to basically nationalize America. And unfortunately, like, we're probably going to fail in the vaccine rollout. Even the vaccine, in
Hmm.
theory, let's say the vaccine works as good as they say it does, it looks like we're going to fail horribly in the rollout. And it looks like, God forbid, we're near 5,000 deaths. It could be in a week or two, or a month, 10,000 deaths a day in America. And people are going to be turning to the government. And when they're saying, how did these other countries do it? It wasn't because Trump was an idiot. It was because Trump believed in freedom. And when you see how do these other countries do it, they arrested you when you left your house.
Well, that's certainly an unpleasant thing to note. I mean, yeah.
And I knew this
I
from the
mean,
beginning, from March, like even reading
you
that book.
have been
I
saying
read
this, yeah.
Jack Ma's Best Practice. He put out a book and it was already available in towards the end of March, of the Jack Ma Foundation Best Practice
Hmm.
in China. And I showed it to my dad, who thank God got a second vaccine shot, because he's 70 now. Thank God you lived to 120 and still working as a doctor. So he was one of the first people to get his shots.
How did
And
it
I showed
work
him the
out? Is
Jack
he
Ma
okay?
Foundation recommendation. He said there is 0% chance we're going to be able to do that in America.
How do you? I mean, are people who are getting the shots, are they okay? I mean, is everything? Do you know
My
people who?
dad's fine. I mean, thank God.
Yeah,
I don't even
because I
think.
know a few people who have had it, and there's been
I
no
mean, he's been
problem.
getting flu shots every year. My dad believes in vaccines, and he's probably
Sure.
been getting his shots for years. So it didn't have. And obviously he's a family practice doctor. He does hospice. He is one of the people who needs it the most. My mother, who's retired, is still in line, and she might have to wait now months. Like, she had originally, should have already got her shot, but whatever's wrong here, my mother might even have to wait a few months. But because she's retired and not actively on the front line. But
Right. Well,
I
I
think
mean, obviously, we're all concerned with the potential problems, bad side effects of the shot, and I don't have any hard evidence. I've got anecdotal evidence. A couple of people in my family have had it because they're in the medical profession, like your father, and they're fine so far. I mean, that's the only thing I can say about it. I mean, I hear things out there that say it's not so wonderful from some people, but we'll see.
I
Um,
mean, you took relatively high birth to say, my parents are doctor and lawyer. And obviously, there's people richer and more powerful. But like, I went to good schools, and I was trained to become a professional and go to good schools, and you get good advice from the right people. And your average person who like, you say, thank God I know hundreds of doctors, but a lot of people, they don't even know any doctors, and they're likely to turn to the government. But if you took higher birth, usually that the government is, I don't say incompetent might be too strong, but it's saying, like, you don't, like, if you have extra money, you basically never work with the government, even like security, even like President Trump. From a general, most presidents make more money than they ever made after they were president, because the power of the seat, and even becoming president
yeah,
for
they
someone like
cash in
President
afterwards,
Obama
of course.
was but I'm saying that's the way. The Jewish Federation in Metro Detroit, we employ former cops. You're saying the New York Stock Exchange um, has all senior ranking former chief of police and generals, and saying that, like, private security, Eric Prince, even the army and military generally is privatized. But like, doctors, my father, God forbid, he doesn't see Medicaid patients anymore. It's too difficult. And but like a lot of top doctors don't even take insurance, let alone Medicaid or Medicare. So if you so to say took high birth, you had a period of time where you had a big bank account, you know that you don't want to turn to the government to help. That like you would only turn to the government to help if you couldn't afford to pay the people who are good enough to not work for the government.
Mm-hmm.
But your average citizen who so to say didn't take high birth to know that really they have no choice but to turn to the government, and they're going to expect the government to be able to answer their questions. So someone like me telling them like you don't really want to turn to the government, and then they go, well, where can I turn to? And so it's going to be a very difficult situation, especially with COVID-19 and so many people dying, and probably the trouble that's going to be getting people vaccinated, and God forbid if the medical system starts becoming overfilled. Israel's putting out papers. The medical system, they said they've had a 25% increase in death rate due to the overcrowdedness of the hospital. I'm sure if you read the Israeli papers, the guy whose oxygen tube fell out and he died simply because the staff was overworked and couldn't get his oxygen tube back in. And so you might see stuff like that starting to happen. It's probably already happening here in the U.S. And people are just going to demand an answer, and that might empower the government to I'd be a lot more worried about that than Trump and fascism or the alt-right. I think it's COVID that's going to do it to us.
Well, that is being used and has been used as a political.
Used, but it's the American people who are just.
Well, it was used as a political tool to
demand answers, can demand the government to do something, even though in reality the government can't really help us.
Yeah, well, that's a cheerful thought. So, David, anyway, let my viewers and listeners know where they can check out your YouTube channel and whatever.
Yeah, I'm David on YouTube. I haven't been posting that much content because I've been streaming on others. So Thursday, Charles, we partners in Torah and various issues, enjoying that, and I'm glad to see Charles' program growing. I hope you could get your tech together. So next
my God, yeah, that's such working. That's like a real job to get everything functioning. But when it functions, it's beautiful.
But it's probably because it's the most important part of the show, that people getting the technology right, the sound good, the video.
Of course.
But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to fix that. And apologize to anybody who definitely it's expensive, and you got to hire people, you got to do it. A program takes a lot of work. So
that's the problem. I do it on the cheap. But anyway,
all right. And I'm working with in Jerusalem. I'm streaming with Lowell Gallen and Les Glassman Monday and Wednesdays in Jerusalem, 8:30 at night, which is 1:30 Eastern time. This week, both of our guests had to cancel. In fact, one of our guests had both of them had technology problems, and that's what I'm doing. Me and Jennifer are doing for them. We're trying to tutor them and their guest on how to Zoom and these programs. And it's interesting. He had retired military colonel that had spoken in Jerusalem years ago, and now that he's Zooming, you just figure, let's have this guy speak in Jerusalem again. But he didn't have his tech together enough, so rescheduled. But Lowell Gallen was a journalist for years and has a very big network of interesting people like Charles that is doing a regular show, and so it's really an honor to stream with Charles and Root and Branch, and Sunday nights on Jennifer Church of Entropy's channel, Week in Review. So as of now, I got Sunday night, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and not much going on my channel, but that might change.
Well, you're in big demand. Are you still getting requests from all the anti-Semites?
Because they all got kicked off of YouTube.
Okay.
So I told Adam Green, I think Christopher Van Jerkens, so I released some more stuff. But I mean, really, it would be scary, because if I continue to debate anti-Semites on the dark web, then there would be no reason to even attempt to obey the censorship rules. So I'm not even sure. I told him I would do it because, God forbid, I don't want to do it, but if that's my duty, I'll do it. But he himself, if you're gonna have a no hold bar debate between, it's gonna be like the Donahue show, Jerry Springer.
Right.
People
Yeah. Sure.
Be
People start throwing chairs.
So it may not be. There may be no way to do it, which is probably bad, because
they have to be challenged. Yeah.
and saying I said that when I spoke. Now these guys are teaming up, E. Michael Jones and Christopher Van Jerkness and all these people and are now not on YouTube. And now Adam Green's not even. I think he's not even on DLive, or maybe it was someone else.
Mhm.
So they keep on moving around servers, and it's likely that God forbid the Jews are going to keep on going after them, trying to ruin their lives, and they're going to keep on becoming more
More
radicalized.
radicalized,
And
yeah.
they might even start using the power of the government against these people, which God forbid will probably even radicalize them worse.
It's only going to add to the exacerbation and the conflict. And there's a lot going on in terms of general race conflict right now with, race identity politics on both sides. I mean, that's a big subject. Anyway, David, listen, I want to thank you as always for joining me.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, talk to you soon. Yes, sir.
Trying to get my lunch. I made ratatouille.
You made ratatouille? Oh, that's nice.
It was snowing. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw a little snow. Oh boy, technical problems today.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I couldn't get the show live on YouTube, so I had to just record it, and I'm hoping it recorded okay.
On YouTube you recorded it? Or
No, I
something?
just recorded it from Zoom, but I couldn't go. Usually Zoom lets me go live on YouTube, and I can't get that to work. It's really frustrating.